Everyone, my name is Leyna Doty, and for my internship, I worked with Interim CDA in International District at the Danny Blue Garden. My site supervisor was Andy Allen, and my faculty advisor was Eli Wheat. With their help, I investigated soil remediation and equitable communication while primarily working with elderly immigrant communities. Community garden soils across the Puget Sound region are contaminated with lead and arsenic from industrial pollution. These heavy metals can cause heart disease, cancer, dementia, and other severe health concerns. King County provides free soil testing and education pamphlets to anyone who's affected. However, these resources are much more difficult to access or completely unavailable to non-English speaking communities. My internship worked to bridge this accessibility and knowledge gap by answering two questions. What are the most effective methods for reducing arsenic and lead contamination in community garden soils? And what are equitable techniques for communicating best practices to marginalized communities? I have a bunch of methods due to challenges, so bear with me. During my internship, I tested soil health and pH and contaminant levels with gardeners. I ended up scratching the soil contaminant levels and just focused on the soil pH. I then applied lime to raise the pH of suboptimal soils. I conducted soil contaminant knowledge and management surveys, which I ended up scratching. So because of that, I pivoted to an observational study on soil health practices in the garden. Finally, I presented soil health best practices to the community, and I complemented this internship with a literature review. Moving on to the results, I successfully tested the soil pH and applied lime amendment to 4 plots. 2 of them improved pH and 2 didn't change. Through my research, I learned that compost is the most effective and accessible amendment for soil health and pH. However, compost is a very common cultural practice, which is why I opted to use lime as a secondary amendment. Figure 2 shows this cultural protection, as the majority of gardeners have healthy soils based on site-specific color tests that I used. On the communication side, I heavily relied on my research, which recommended that we provide autonomy to affected communities. This looked like working with gardeners to go through the soil testing and amendment process themselves. Through the process, gardeners continuously asked about the results and what they should do. This, backed by research, indicates that providing consistent updates and transparency for stakeholders not only helps reduce worry, but also allows for further collaboration on solutions. Gardeners also knew of other amendments and health impacts of the lead and arsenic. I had some insightful conversations with gardeners who have used other amendments in the past or were doing their own research and asking me about specific amendments. Getting into the implications and barriers, I ended up scratching the survey data because there were too many translation challenges. This barrier was also likely the reason why I only ended up with a few participants for the soil testing. We had about 10 at the beginning, but a few of them ended up like leaving or canceling, or there were just a lot of translation issues. During my internship, I also only applied lime as an amendment. I had initially hoped to apply about 2 to 3 different amendments, as well as have more control plots that were specific garden plots versus like general garden plots, like community garden plots. But due to the competitive culture of the garden, I only tested one amendment. If I had used several, that would mean that one gardener might receive a more effective amendment or no amendment at all, which would likely cause discourse throughout the garden. There were a lot of arguments and fights between gardeners when I was there that had nothing to do with my project. Next steps for mitigating contaminated soil would be to provide accessible amendments for communities. Moving beyond soil contamination, solutions should consider the impacts of cultural practices that might provide protection or might be more damaging, yet essential within the solution. This ties into communities and decision-making process, like hosting roundtables to create community-driven solutions. Hosting seminars and presentations have been shown to be the most effective form of education for communities. To wrap things up, there is extensive soil contamination in the Puget Sound region. Figure 3 shows the level of contamination, with darker colors indicating higher levels of contamination. The Danny Wu Garden shows low levels of contamination, but still have higher than safe levels in many of the plots. Each community experiencing contamination will need a unique solution to access education and resource materials. Some communities might not have translation barriers, but others will have, or there's many different barriers. Because of each unique situation, community-driven solutions are critical to creating an equitable result that benefits all stakeholders. I'd like to thank my site supervisor, Andy Allen, for troubleshooting with me over and over again, and everyone I worked with at Interim, Eli Wait for helping me through all of my research, my friends and family for all of the free therapy. Thank you.